Ricky here, and you're watching Ricky Talks Shop. Thank you for tuning in. I have here today an Ibanez S Classic. You can see here, it's a very, very good guitar. This one came in, and the customer said he loves the way this plays. This is his favorite guitar to play, but it's his least favorite sounding guitar that he owns. He told me the only sounds he used in it at all were the coil tap sounds. And it had a Duncan JB bridge pickup in it. And while this pickup certainly has its place, it's also got quite a rolled off high end. And that can make it feel very, very compressed at times. So we're getting rid of that. The neck pickup that was in it, it measured just under 13K, ceramic magnet, very good quality stock pickup. Not a very ideal neck pickup, but we're going to try it as a bridge pickup because it's really good quality. It's a nice pickup, and there's no reason to throw it out if it's going to sound good there. So we're going to do it. I'm going to play it for a bit, see what I think, and if I like it, we'll pass it on to the customer. But we'll see. This might come back, and we may end up rewinding this pickup. But if I can save a customer that expense, why not? The neck pickup is one of my own. This is a slightly overwound PAF. It measures right around 8.25K. Alnico 5 magnet, enamel wire. A little bit hot for a neck pickup, but I find it works really well with a hotter bridge pickup. And pickups that are a little bit hotter also do a little better job coil tapping. And I think that's very important is the customer liked those coil tap sounds, so I don't want to lose that. And that means going with a little bit hotter pickups to maintain that. I'm going to put this out of the way for now. And I have all my parts. And I've got them mounted just on a piece of paperboard, just junk mail. And what I've done is once I took the original parts out of the guitar, you just lay this on the face of the guitar and you go inside the cavity and you just mark where the holes are. And then you cut the holes out and mount your parts on here. So now this lays out for the switch and the volume and tone pots exactly the way they'll sit on the guitar. And then I do an extra hole to put my jack in to make it easier to solder. And the point of this is I'm doing as much wiring as I can outside of the guitar. It's just way easier, and you avoid risking burning the finish with your soldering iron. So some of the parts I have, these are CTS 500K mini pots. Good quality part. And the reason I'm using these instead of a full-size pot is just some of the routing inside the guitar. A full-size pot didn't really fit well. And the big difference is the wiper inside the pot. When you turn your control, it travels around the outside diameter. So on this pot, it has a lot more distance to travel, even though it's the same resistance. And that it gives you a smoother action to where these might seem a little twitchier, but I mean they are a good quality part and they're what fits the guitar, so they're appropriate to use here. I have my tone capacitor. This is a Russian K73. It is a paper in oil or a PIO capacitor. And I really like these because they're easily available, they're dirt cheap, they're only a few bucks, and they perform as close to an original 50s or 60s Bumblebee capacitor as anything I've found. Definitely worth checking out. I've got an original style barrel jack, and I have a super switch Now some people get a little confused wiring these because they are a little more intense than a standard Stratocaster switch. The thing to remember though is you have, I don't know how well you can see, but you have 4 separate switches that all operate at the same time on here. So what I'm going to do is the first switch will control when the neck pickup is on. The next switch will control when the bridge pickup is on. The next switch back here on the back row, this first one, that'll control when the neck pickup is coil tapped. And our last one will control when the bridge pickup is coil tapped. And I'll show you how to wire this. Hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. And I'm trying to find some software or something. I'm not much of an artist, but I'll try to get a schematic of what I'm doing here and post that for you as well. Next, I have just cloth pushback wire. I really like using this stuff. I've got some twisted together for the output jack, and I've got my links pre-cut ready to go. I have just 20 gauge bus wire. This stuff, a 100-foot roll like this is $13 or $14. So if you're a hobbyist doing this at home just for yourself, 13, 14 bucks, it will probably last you forever. Ready to get soldering here. Now I've got my soldering iron warmed up. And like I said, hopefully you can see what I'm doing well. Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some bus wire and I'm going to ground my 2 pots together. I'm just going to solder right onto the sides of the pots to do this. And I'm using, this is 60/40 solder, and I got this from Guitar Fetish. Surprisingly, really good quality solder they're selling. I really like this stuff. So we're going to go ahead and tin our tip a little bit. Get ready to go. And we'll just right onto the side of our pot. And give it a second to cool. Now I'll position it to get my second one. And I'm going to leave a little bit of slack in here, because if my holes aren't lined up perfectly with where the guitar is, I don't want it to end up stretched tight. So it's always good to leave yourself a little room to play. And just go right here. Again, just a little bit of solder is all it takes. Get a nice solder joint. And clip that off. We're done with that. Next, we'll wire our tone control. And I'm going to solder. Turn it this way. Solder this in first. Doesn't really matter, I suppose. Let that cool for a second. Now I want to show you this. I could wire my other lead from the tone control, if you can see here. I could wire that to either the outside lug of the pot or the center lug. And the difference is, if I go to the outside lug, this connects to the output from the switch. So this is connected directly to whatever pickup is active. And the frequency that our tone control operates at is determined by the value of the capacitor, in this case 0.022 UF, and the resistance it sees from the pickup. So with this, it's directly connected to the pickup. In the center, it goes through the pot. So when the pot's all the way up, these two are essentially connected directly together. So it's the same either way. But as you roll the pot back, you roll your volume down, you increase that resistance. So you change the frequency that your tone control operates at, giving you, it's a little more tonal versatility. A lot of vintage Les Pauls that you'll find are wired like this. So you can do some really cool stuff like that, and that's the way I prefer to go. We'll solder that quick. And that's in place. And we'll trim. And trim that. Next thing I'm going to do is just get my my two ground lugs on the pots. So there we go. And you can see, I mean, nice, clean, shiny solder joints. If you've never really done this before, something you can do is you can pull the old electronics out of your guitar, and you can unsolder everything and resolder it back together just to practice, just to get a feel for what you're doing. Next, I've got a couple lengths of wire that I've kind of pre-cut and got ready to go. And I've also kind of made some splits in the covering. So this black one, this will be our ground for our switch, for our coil tapping. And this is going to go through underneath the switch, and we're going to connect to the outputs of both of these back row here. Just get the wire where I want it. Now when you're wiring these, soldering onto these switches too, it's important to try and not use any more solder than is necessary, because it's pretty easy to use too much solder and then you messed up your expensive switch. Solder that wire into place. Push back our wire a little bit. Solder our other side into place. Okay. And now this wire is gonna just come over and ground on our pot. Sorry, I had a brain fart there. Happens, I guess. Had to think about what I was doing. wire a little bit more. All right. So we've got our ground for our coil taps right there. Our next wire is going to go to the front of the switch, and this will go to our output to the volume pot. Put that up. Solder that in place. And again, I mean, we're just looking for nice, clean, shiny solder joints. If you ever get a dull looking solder joint, you need to redo it, you need to fix it. Because that is a bad solder joint, and we don't want that. You can see how easy this is to, I mean, just flip this thing around wherever I need it and get whatever best angle I can get. You really can't do this in a guitar as nicely. So next we'll wire to our output jack. This might actually be easier to do off of the paper. Yep, it will. And it never hurts either to give a solder joint just a little tug, just to make sure you've got a good solder joint. I have seen guitars that were wired to where, I mean, you'd pull on a wire and it would just come apart. I've actually seen brand new factory wired guitars like that. All right, and there we have it. Our wiring harness, quick and easy, it doesn't take long. Pre-wired, ready to drop into our guitar. I've got our ground wire for our coil taps, our output wire, our tone capacitor, everything's grounded together, wired up. Our jack's wired up. We're in right about 20 minutes, so thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to watch part 2 where I'll wire everything into the guitar, and then we'll get it strung up and show you what it sounds like. Thanks for watching. Ricky here, and welcome to Ricky Talk Shop. Thanks for tuning in. This is part 2 of our Ibanez S Classic rewire video. First off, I did run into a snag when I was putting everything together here. Our super switch is too tall to fit inside the cavity. I test fit to make sure everything went in there. I did not test to make sure the cover went back on with the new parts installed. So if anyone out there knows of a good aftermarket switch that will fit inside these S Classic guitars, please leave a comment, let the rest of us know. Another thing, I tried to get a good camera angle where you could see what I was wiring inside the guitar. I'm going to have to do some more research, a little looking to find something that'll work. So I went ahead, I just finished wiring it up with the original switch back in the guitar because that was still good. So I'll bring this up, hopefully you can see all of our wiring, nice and neat, clean solder joints inside the guitar. I've got tape around the cavities. That's to protect our finish. Soldering irons are hot, solder splashes, and if you get a drop of solder on your finish, it's going to melt the finish where it lands. So, yeah, pretty simple. Got our knobs put back on. Yeah, I'm going to shut this down. I'll finish putting this back together and see you guys again for part 3, where we'll check out how this thing sounds. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.